Yes, that's correct. The judge has denied what the SEC was asking. Now, don't get too excited. It's nothing crazy, but they were rejected in their effort to produce even more information about why they think that they should not be allowed to hide all the emails and all of the behind-the-scenes discussion that Judge Knepper said that they have to produce. In this video, I'm going to tell you about what some of the motions are that have been denied, some of them that have been granted, what is upcoming and due by July 28th that John Deaton has to prepare for. And I'm going to tell you about the new things that the SEC wants to hide. Yes, I know, shocker. And speaking of the SEC, there's some more assertions about crypto tokens being securities, this one linked to the CoinBase insider trading scandal. I'm going to tell you what CoinBase just fired back at the SEC, and once again, it's just another chink in the armor that proves that the SEC is not doing things correctly. So I'm going to tell you what the chief legal officer of CoinBase just fired back with. And we're going to go over some of the trending headlines so far this weekend. Hey everyone, my name is Randy. Welcome back to the Late Night Grind. Right now on this channel, we are covering the Ripple versus the SEC case, as well as other cryptocurrency news, investment markets, and personal finance. So if any or all these topics interest you, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, join the Late Night Grind community. Don't forget to hit that bell notification icon. That way YouTube will notify you when I release a new video. And of course, if you do a couple of things, I'd appreciate it. Smash the thumbs up button, watch this video all the way to the end. And of course, check out my Patreon. There's a link in the description below. And don't forget, you can follow the Late Night Grind on Twitter as well. Link is in the description below. All right, guys, let's jump into it. So I'm going to first start with what Coinbase just told the SEC, because their chief legal officer, Paul Grewal, he actually wrote up something that shows that Coinbase is, of course, 100% in disagreement with what the SEC is asserting. Now, if you're not familiar with this case, there was an insider trading scandal in which one of Coinbase's former employees, actually several of them, were charged with insider trading, one of which actually got privy information to which tokens, which Coinbase was going to be listing. They would then buy that token, wait for the listing, and when the price would spike up, they would sell and make their profits. Now, of course, that being illegal, was brought to the SEC's attention by somebody on Twitter, and of course they are now arrested, and we're going to see what comes of that most likely in the next few months. So, but during all this whole process, the SEC actually asserted that the 9 tokens that this former employee was insider trading with were considered securities. Well, Coinbase didn't exactly agree with that. So here's what Paul Grewal, their leading legal counsel, actually fired back at the SEC, and I gotta tell you, it doesn't paint the SEC in a good light. If you've been following this Ripple versus the SEC case, you know that, well, you know what, that's very easy to do. So here's what Paul wrote. He said, Coinbase has a rigorous process to analyze and review each digital asset before making it available on our exchange, a process that the SEC itself has actually reviewed. Now, this is just another piece of the SEC's come in and talk to us method of basically search and destroy enforcement. So Paul continued, he said, we've cooperated with the Department of Justice and the SEC on this investigation. And he said the Department of Justice reviewed the same facts as the SEC and decided not to file securities fraud charges against those involved. In other words, they took a look at the facts and decided, you know what, those aren't securities, so therefore we can't charge them with securities fraud. So it looks like in this particular case, even the Department of Justice is not on the side of the SEC. And Coinbase's chief legal counsel also said, we are 100% in disagreement with the SEC's assertion that any type of crypto asset we list are securities. So this is a really interesting story that I'm going to continue to follow, because there is going to be little nuggets of information that comes out about the SEC's enforcement actions regarding this. So I'm going to continue to follow it, and make sure you subscribe to Late Night Grind if you want to follow along with the information as it comes out. And so before I talk about what Ripple and the SEC are doing, I wanted to talk about some of this weekend's trending headlines, because some of them caught my attention and I can't exactly cover all of them, but there's some really interesting pieces of information that has just been coming out. In fact, one of the more interesting pieces that I saw was a headline that said the Terra Luna collapse was actually predicted 4 years ago. So I clicked on it and I had to read, and it was basically about somebody who is currently an Ethereum developer. They worked for Maker DAO, the Maker DAO. And back in 2018, they reviewed the Terra Luna ecosystem and said, hold on, this can't work. It's basically a death spiral, or it has the possibility of a death spiral. And it mentioned how this developer realized and saw that the way the Terra Luna ecosystem was essentially self essentially codependent on each other. He says what happens is when Terra loses its peg, well, Luna, which is supposed to back it, is also going to fall because investors are going to be scared, and it's going to create a death spiral because being codependent, well, they're both going to fall together, which is exactly what happened. So I thought that was really interesting. And of course, after this all happened, I started to wonder if this is the same thing that happened, the same death spiral that happened to Mark Cuban's pick. I believe it was Titan last year that shortly after that was picked by him to be the next crypto project to back. Well, it collapsed catastrophically by death spiral. So in any case, there's a lot more people looking out for digital assets that may essentially be codependent and open to something like a death spiral. And if you see that, run. Another headline that I saw was Shiba Inu flips Tron as the SHIB metaverse gains pace. This SHIB metaverse project that I read about, they actually just formed a partnership and announced a partnership with visualization studio TTF. Now TTF is actually a visualization studio that's worked with Marvel. They've worked with Star Wars on different things. And so this SHIB metaverse project seems to be gaining a lot more popularity. And also, if you've been following some of the price charts, you know that Ethereum has been pushing very hard and very heavy in its price action lately. It says Ethereum's cup and handle trading pattern suggests a breakout soon. I took a look at that pattern and it doesn't look like a breakout soon. It kind of already had its breakout. It was leading. It was one of the leading gainers in all of crypto last week. This cup and handle, it's up against too much of a resistance right now. There's too much bearish divergence on the RSIs, on the momentums, and the money flow. It's up against a major resistance. Like I said, I don't think that cup and handle is going to result in a breakout. I think we're going to have to wait a little bit and see what Bitcoin does. If Bitcoin has its breakout up to 26, 28K, then you'll probably see Ethereum go higher, but probably not until then. And finally, yet another person is predicting where Bitcoin is going to go and when this next bull run is going to commence. Well, financial professional Florian Grums expects the next Bitcoin bull run to commence in about 1 year. He says just before the halving. Could be something to keep an eye on. All right, so now let's get into the Ripple versus the SEC case. The judge recently came back and denied some of what the SEC was actually wanting. In my last video, you would have seen the SEC, they had written a letter to the judge asking for permission to submit a 30-page, basically it's going to be an appeal or an objection letter into the court, which is a lot more than they're typically allowed. And then they wanted a 10-page reply brief because they're going to be assuming that Ripple is going to be objecting to their initial 30-page opening brief. The judge denied that and said, nope, you can't do it. It's got to be limited to 20 pages. The 10-page reply brief is, however, granted. Now, this objection, of course, is to Judge Netburn's recent ruling that the Bill Hinman emails need to be made public, and yet this is like the 589th time that the SEC is, of course, trying to keep these emails and correspondence hidden. And speaking of the SEC hiding things, they also submitted a motion to the judge seeking to keep all of their expert witnesses in this new Daubert report hidden. Now, what they say is that previously John Deaton actually exposed one of their expert witnesses, and that expert witness was subject to all kinds of threats and bullying online from the XRP community. So the SEC is attempting to use that to try to keep all of their expert witnesses hidden. So they proposed something that said, listen, we want to keep all the information, the contact information, who they are, what their education is, where they work, all this completely hidden because we don't want their identities shown. So this is what Ripple is filing back against. They are objecting to it and wanting to limit the amount of essentially sealings and redactions that the SEC is going to be doing with these. So we're going to be waiting for some decisions from the judges regarding that. But we also did just receive a determination from the court that July 28th is now the official date that any non-parties would have to submit any redactions, any sealing, anything that they would want sealed in their motions regarding these expert witnesses. This, of course, being John Deaton. So he's got until July 28th. Again, don't bother him. He's busy. So this is going to be an interesting one coming up. We're going to see what the SEC is actually arguing this time as to why they should keep these Bill Hinman emails hidden. Seems like this court case is coming down to the information that is contained in those correspondence. Man, I can't wait to see them come public. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. I really appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Smash that thumbs up button. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next video.